Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from Beyond. I'm Zeckthar.
And I'm Yuksen.
We are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, yet for the next couple of months, we will be discussing the greatest disaster in the history of the Imperium of Man. That's right, folks. The Horus Heresy.
Indeed. Now this will be interesting because instead of covering a particular faction, we will be following a timeline. Starting from the Great Crusade, we will end at the Siege of Terra.
That's right. But before we start, if you like our stuff, feel free to follow, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you really like our boxes, feel free to join our membership program, like Sabinder Byton, our very first member.
Quite right, brother. And thank you to our newest member, Hermes Skirty. Well, what are we going to talk about today, Zeckthar?
Well, this week, we come to the end of the debacle known as the Horus Heresy, with the Siege of Terra.
Really? We're just going straight to that?
Well, yeah. Now, keep in mind, we could discuss a lot more of the intricacies of the heresy, but that would probably take a couple more months. Keep in mind, as we continue on doing different Space Marine chapters in Xenospecies, we will have bonus boxes done by yours truly that will be about different aspects of this galactic civil war. Now, another warning for this week's episode. It will be another long one, shorter than Cadia, but longer than our regular scheduled programs. So sit back, grab a beer or a tasty beverage, and enjoy. Now, brother, before we do get started with the initial war in space, perhaps I do a quick recap, though, on what took place between the Drop Site Massacre and the Solar War.
Excellent idea, as usual, brother.
Very good. Now, over the course of the next 7 Terran years after the bitter defeat of the Drop Site Massacre, the Imperium of Man was locked in a brutal interstellar civil war. Yet as the war ground on, the traitors' main objective became horrifically clear. Terra, the heart of the Imperium of Man. The sons of Horus, the Death God. The Emperor's children, the World Eaters. And elements of the Word Bearers prepared to rendezvous at Mars. The rest of the Word Bearers Legion was tasked with destroying Rabute Gilliman and his Ultramarines on the world of Kalth in the eastern fringes of the galaxy. The Imperial Fist Legion's Primarch, Rogel Dorn, and the Regent of the Imperium, Malkador the Sigillite, received the few survivors from the Drop Site Massacre of S15 as they retreated back to Terra and became fully aware of the full implications of their position and the strength of Horus and the traitor forces. Rogel Dorn immediately recalled all loyalist Imperial forces back to Terra in preparation for Horus's invasion. Of the Space Marine legions still loyal to the Emperor, the Space Wolves had just completed the burning of Prospero, the Thousand Suns Traitor Legion homeworld near the Chondak system, where the White Scars were stationed as part of the Chondak campaign. Without warning, the Alpha Legion's fleet broke from warp and engaged the Space Wolves' forces, hammering Russ's smaller fleet and forcing Russ to resort to hit-and-run attacks. The Alpha Legion's Primarch Alpharius also attacked the nearby forces of the White Scars, piecemeal, in an attempt to draw that larger Astartes Legion into conflict. Now, Russ sent a distress call to the nearby White Scars, requesting that his brother Primarch, Jagatai Khan, send his forces in order to assist the beleaguered 6th Legion against the traitorous Alpha Legion. Unsure as to which side the Space Wolves truly belonged, the Khan sympathized with his brother Primarch's predicament, but refused to get involved until he was able to sort out the conflicting and often contradictory astropathic messages he had received. Until he knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, who was ally and who was an enemy, he refused to choose sides. Wishing his brother the best of luck, Jagatai wished to seek answers elsewhere. Russ resolved to meet the Alpha Legion with renewed determination, and they were rescued by, of all people, a contingent of Dark Angels, and made their way back to Terra. Russ then took off again to hunt down Horus, and if you want to know more about that, check out our Vox, The Spear of Russ. In fact, by the time of the Siege of Terra, only 3 legions and their Primarchs had made it to Terra. Rogel Dorn, who had spent the last 7 years preparing the defenses of the Sol system for this event, Jagatai Khan, who after taking a side trip to Prospero and a duel with Mortarion made it to Terra, and Sanguinius, who made it past the Rune Storm and arrived in time to help his brothers against the traitors. As this happened, the Night Lords arrived in the eastern fringe of the galaxy to engage the Dark Angels, and the Iron Warriors Armada broke from warp to engage the Imperial Fist fleet marooned near the Chaos Space Marines headquarters world of S15. Surviving the initial thrust of the Iron Warriors' attack, the Imperial Fist Armada, at fall, held fast and scattered the Primarch Perturbo's fleets, then made their own warp jump to Terra in a desperate race against time. Following the Battle of Beta Garmon, which represented the last major loyalist resistance beyond Terra, the door to the Sol system had been opened wide. Horus finally mustered his forces on Ulanor Prime after almost a solar decade of war. They included the Sons of Horus, World Eaters, Emperor's Children, Thousand Sons, Death Guard, and Iron Warriors, each commanded by their respective Primarchs. These forces were bolstered by elements of the Night Lords and 5,000 Word Bearers commanded by Zardu Lek, as the majority of the Word Bearer legions remained under command of Primarch Lorgar, who had betrayed the War Master. Now, along with the loyalist Space Marines who did show up in Terra, they were reinforced by 3 full Titan legions of the Mechanicum and close to 2 million soldiers of the Imperialis Auxilia stood alongside them to face the traitors in battle that would determine the fate of mankind for the next 10,000 years. But the Castellan of Terra knew that his forces were too few to do more than slow the ultimate traitor victory. All they could do was buy enough time for loyalist reinforcements to reach the throne world. Now, Yuksen, what is happening in space?
Well, some say that the Traitor Legion Armada's arrival at Sol on the first day of the first month of 14.M31 was the beginning of the Solar War, aka the War in Space. This is a bit of a misunderstanding. The Solar War actually started in 10.M31. It was at this time that Alpha Legion announced its entry into the Solar War by exploding the freighter Primigenia over Terra, killing millions by raining debris. This was accompanied by Alpha Legion's organized uprisings at Terra's Deimos starport and Triton. All of this culminated in the first major battle of the Solar War, the Battle of Pluto. The battle saw the Alpha Legion drive on Pluto, linchpin of the loyalist monitoring of the Sol system. This is the battle that sought the demise of one of Alpha Legion's Primarchs.
You're talking about what we discussed in our Vox, Alpharius, and Omegan, the twin Primarchs?
Correct.
Ah.
Now, to best explain how things went during the final phase of the Solar War, aka Horus Traitor Legion Armada attacking, I must talk about Dorn's 5 spheres of Sol system defenses. Each consisted of not only Imperial Fist forces, but also Loyalist Imperial Army and Mechanicum. The first sphere was the outermost defensive zone from Pluto to Neptune. It was commanded by First Captain Sigismund at Pluto. The second sphere oversaw Uranus. It was commanded by Fleet Master Halbrick. The third sphere oversaw the Jupiter region. It was commanded by Seneschal Efried. The fourth sphere was commanded by Siege Master Kamba Diaz and oversaw the blockade of traitor-occupied Mars. This sphere was the largest of the 4 outer layers of defense, surpassed only by the Terran sphere. The fifth sphere was...
So Kamba Diaz actually made it out of Mars. The Schism.
Yeah.
I was kind of wondering what happened to him. we never actually finished out what happened to him, but apparently he showed up here.
You failed, so you have to watch over it now.
Oh, man. Sorry. Carry on, sir.
The fifth sphere was Terra and Luna, overseen by Primarch Rogel Dorn himself. And so he starts the final phase with the Traitor Legion Armada's arrival on the first day of the first month of 14.M31. As expected by the Loyalists, the traitors made their initial assaults on the 2 warp gates into the system that allowed for the bypassing of Mandeville points, the Chthonic Gate at Pluto and the Lygian Gate at Uranus. Near simultaneously, a Sons of Horus Armada under Horus Aximund struck at Pluto, while an Iron Warriors fleet under Perturabo assaulted the defenses of Uranus, both engaging the Imperial Fist and Imperial Armada defense fleets under Sigismund and Halbrick, respectively. At the same time, an armada of Sons of Horus, Thousand Sons, Word Bearers, and Dark Mechanicum under Ezekiel Abaddon, Azek Araman, Zardu Layak, and Sota Null respectively moved over the galactic disk, bypassing the initial Loyalist defenses and striking down into the upper crust of the defensive spheres. The Loyalists had foreseen such a ploy, and a force of White Scars under Jubal Khan was ready to meet the traitors. Across the Sol system, hundreds of small engagements erupted to make up a naval battle of titanic proportions. Though the Loyalists had the advantage of preparations and large amounts of orbital defense platforms and other armored bastions, the traitors had the luxury of overwhelming numbers and warp sorcery.
Now, pardon me, Yuksen. One thing that's kind of interesting about this is that a lot of this armada that you're talking about happen to be rogue traders and pirates that had joined Horus's side.
Maybe because they felt that the fact that the Emperor kept shoving them out there and saying, "You guys go first."
Maybe. I just thought that was
and we aren't supporting you at all, so just have fun.
Sorry, carry on.
Now, the War Master had been provided intelligence by the Alpha Legion during their earlier attacks, which proved critical, with Horus having personally been given a map of all Loyalist defenses in the Sol system by Alfarius.
Yeah, I remember that. We talked about that in the Twins Vox 2, didn't we?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it was one of the twins ends up getting killed by Dorn. The other one takes the information back to Horus, and right before he gives it back to him, he smashes it to pieces and then says peace, and then he leaves.
Yeah,
if I recall right,
finger.
Yeah, and that's pretty much. If I recall right, that's the last time you really see Alpha Legion involved in the Horus Heresy, isn't it?
Well,
okay. They don't take place in the Solar War or on the Siege of Terra.
I think that they still did a little bit of maybe a little bit of uprising and terrorism for a little while, but yeah, they had pretty much pulled out by the time that the Traitor Armada showed up.
Right. And we're also excluding those couple anyways that showed up in John Grammaticus' story. We're not talking about them.
Right. No.
I'm talking about the main bulk of them.
Oh yeah, well the main bulk of them was never there to begin with. I mean, 200. Well, not that huge a number.
Well, I mean, when it was the Battle of Pluto, I think there was a bunch of them there, wasn't there?
No, there's only a total of 200.
Oh, well, that's
probably one of the reasons why that they're so easy to be pushed back personally. But
fair enough. I mean, if I recall right, anyways, Alpha Legion. It's Alpha Legion. They're around the outskirts doing their own thing. I mean, they did. I mean, there was that whole thing with Lehman Russ and the Khan right before this takes place. And then I think actually during this time, isn't that whole thing going on with Corvus? Corax is going on? That might have been right before too.
That would have had to have been before because originally they're supposed to hand over those gene chart things.
And then they didn't do that either.
And then they gave them a set, just not the actual set.
Right.
They gave them their version of the set.
Right.
And kept the actual version.
Yet again, like I said before, anyways, Alfarius just has got a set of dice, and every day he rolls it. Are we going to be loyalists or traitors today? We're traitors. Okay, fine. We'll deal with Horus.
Sorry, this roll actually means neither.
Yeah, the snake eyes. That's what snake eyes is. Guess we're doing our own thing today. Yes. Sorry.
Man, we've done this how many times now? Let's shut up like that.
Always seems to come up with snake eyes.
One of the people leans over. It's like, when are we eventually going to tell somebody that they're loaded dice?
So, sorry, carry on, man. We could talk about Alpha Legion for the rest of this Vox if we really wanted to, but they're actually not all that important.
Actually, probably till the end of time. But anyways,
carry on, sir.
Quite right. Despite being a great advantage, it also came with its own problems.
How so? What? Wait, what?
Well, I mean, he was given these plans like over 3 years prior to the attack, so things change over 3 years.
Oh, yeah, okay, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
also
not
probably
only
didn't
was
help that he
he,
probably didn't have all of it pieced together by the time they started this either.
well, he did have over
Right.
3 years to put back together.
Worst puzzle ever. Sorry.
It's a cylinder. There are no corners. Anyways, not only did he have to deal now with the pressure of Gilliman being inbound, along with, I believe, the Space Wolves were actually ahead of the Ultramarines on coming back, and also the Dark Angels. So there's actually
Yeah.
3 that were heading
In their direction.
in their
The
direction.
biggest concern, quite frankly, the biggest concern though is the Ultramarines. Because
Yeah,
there was so many
because
more of them.
yeah,
And yeah, and okay, so the thing with the Dark Angels is, if I recall right, I thought Lionel Johnson never actually started to head back to Terra. I know Lehman Russ did,
yeah.
but I'm pretty sure Lionel Johnson started his own like fire and brimstone campaign. I can't remember. I think it was actually literally called the Campaign of Vengeance, and he just starts
Well,
gutting everything that was behind Horus.
that wouldn't make sense until actually something he deemed worth vengeance would be occurring. But anyways,
Yeah, so like I said, I think the only 2 that were actually heading back anyways was the Space Wolves and the Ultramarines.
okay.
Because I know that they okay, so this, if I recall right, it's been a while since I've had to look this up. But if I recall right, the Space Wolves and the Dark Angels ended up meeting up with Corvax, and Lehman Russ wanted to go back to Terra. The Lion didn't want to, and the Raven said flat out, "I'm not going anywhere because there's like me and 5 other dudes here. So you're on your own." But he did end up giving Lehman Russ a bunch of like new armor and munitions and stuff, which the Space Wolves desperately needed. That was one of the big things about that.
Well,
But
yeah,
but
because
what happens? What happens here, anyways, in these spheres?
well, at Pluto, commanding the frigate Lacrimae, Sigismund decimated the initial waves of primary traitor Imperial Army vessels, which arrived through the Chthonic Gate, with not only his fleet, but also the moons of the world, which had now been transformed into gigantic gun fortresses. However, as the traitors arrived in ever-increasing numbers, the sons of Horus finally began to appear, using the ships of their allies as shields to begin to fire back. Soon, Horus Aximund himself aboard the battle barge Throne of the Underworld, translated from the warp, leading a massive push that saw landings on the fortress moons. Most of the incoming attacks were by savage newborn sons of Horus. One by one, the newborn Astartes boarded the moons and unleashed scrap code that either disabled its defenses or turned them to Horus's cause, resulting in the moons beginning to fire on one another. After the moon of Kerberos fell, Sigismund ordered his fleet to retreat. The sons of Horus pursued, walking into the loyalist trap as Sigismund had loyalist Mechanicum tech priests unleash stratagons into the power reactor complex of the moon. Kerberos exploded, decimating and scattering the pursuing traitor fleet. At this moment, Sigismund had his fleet turn back around and launched a vicious counterattack on the traitors. In an attempt to reverse the situation, Aximund personally led an assault on the Lacrimae to decapitate the loyalist command. In a clash between the sons of Horus and Sigismund's Templars, Aximund and Sigismund dueled. Horus Aximund slew the Templar lieutenant Boreas and wounded Sigismund, but the first captain of the Imperial Fist was able to teleport away aboard the nearby frigate Persephone, severing one of Aximund's hands as he retreated. Though wounded, Aximund successfully captured the Lacrimae and organized the counterattack that broke the Loyalist fleet at Pluto. Sigismund ordered a withdrawal towards Terra, informing Rogel Dorn that the first sphere had fallen after several days of fighting. Now, at Uranus, Perturabo himself aboard the Iron Blood oversaw a massive traitor onslaught of over 4,000 vessels through the Legion Gate on Halbrick's Second Sphere Fleet and orbital defenses, commanding the battle barge Monarch of Fire. Halbrick's fleet took a ranged approach, sniping from the screen of 27 fortress moons and hundreds of gun platforms into the rival points of Iron Warrior's vessels with their Nova cannons. Enormous space minefields hindered the traitor fleet, boxing them into these kill zones. Perturabo ran 3 enormous mass conveyor vessels known as Electo, Magera, and Tilfausia into the Loyalist fleet of gun platforms, using them as fire ships and wiping out many of the defenders. With the way to the inner core of Uranus's defenses cleared, Perturabo fielded an enormous space hulk known as the Daughter of Woe, which unleashed hell on the Loyalists with its enormous array of weaponry. One by one, the remaining defensive bastions of Uranus fell to the Iron Warriors' onslaught, with the firepower from the Daughter of Woe devastating the moons Umbriel, Cordelia, and Oberon. As the Iron Warriors closed the distance with Loyalist defense bastions, they unleashed transports filled with millions of drug-fueled gangers, pirates, mutants, and cultists into their bowels. The defending forces, mostly Imperial Army and servitors, fought valiantly but were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. After a delaying maneuver that bought another 36 hours for the Loyalists, Halbrick ordered a retreat towards Terra. He brought with him the majority of the Second Sphere fleet, saved in order to bloody the traitors in future engagements. The Second Sphere had fallen.
Yuksen?
Yeah?
I don't know if you'd mentioned this yet or not, but while it does look like the Loyalists are getting the crap kicked out of them, which they kind of are, this is supposed to be the point. This is they're supposed to hold these spheres as long as possible, and then they're actually supposed to fall back, saving as much as they can of their fleets.
Right.
So it's not just like all of a sudden all is lost and they all leave. This was actually planned.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't know if you mentioned that or not.
Well, I figured that's kind of assumed with the fact they took the majority of the Second Sphere fleet
right
with them. Instead of going, no, I only have 10 ships left. We must flee now.
Well, I mean, with the first sphere, I mean, they're blowing up moons, and it's like, I don't know about that one, but
well, that one, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. What happened to the third fleet or sphere?
With the Second Sphere reduced, there were still thousands of pockets of resistance between Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, and outer Jupiter, and their accompanying moons and orbitals. To speed up the conquest of Sol, Perturabo unleashed waves of pirate Emperor's Children and Night Lord vessels, as well as ships of traitor space marines, which had since taken new colors or names. Though Titan had been cloaked in a ritual by Melchador for a future project, the rest of Saturn and Neptune were terrorized by these vicious bands of killers, while Perturabo, alongside his first captain, Forix, led an assault on Jupiter itself, which was defended primarily by Imperial Fists, Imperial Army, and Blagel vessels under Captain Ifrid. In addition, the majority of the Second Sphere fleet, which had been held from the Battle of Uranus, were finally committed to the battle. Ifrid and Halbrick's fleet slowly gave ground to the Iron Warriors in the vast expanse of Jupiter and her moons, eventually being forced to withdraw to Terra once the overall situation in the Sol system collapsed. Amid the carnage erupting across the outer Sol system, Horus's most important maneuver came above the galactic disk. The combined Sons of Horus, Thousand Suns, Word-Bearer, and Dark Mechanicum fleet plunged into the void between Terra and Mars. This force split in half, with the larger Dark Mechanicum contingent making for Mars, while the traitor Astarius force moved towards Luna. Along the way to Luna, Abaddon's Armada was continually harried by the White Scars under Jubal Khan. However, Abaddon and Zardu Layak were eventually able to board the White Scarf's flagship, the Lance of Heaven, and slay Jubal in combat. At Mars, the large Dark Mechanicum fleet, drawn from hundreds of treacherous Forge worlds, plowed into Kamba Dia's blockade fleet. Consisting of large numbers of Imperial Fists, Blood Angels, Loyalist Mechanicum, and Imperial Army, this force was the largest of the 4 outer spheres, and a vicious battle erupted over the Red Planet. From the battle barge Fortress of Eternity, Kamba Diaz had to deal with attacks on both sides of his fleet as Kelbor Hall's besieged Martian forces launched their own attack in conjunction with the arriving Dark Mechanicum Armada. Understanding the time for a counterattack had arrived, Dorn and his command staff moved to the Phalanx, which finally left Terra's orbit and intended to contest the traitors at Luna and then Mars. Jegatai Khan stated that the traitors had failed as Horus's main fleet had yet to show itself, and the firepower of the Phalanx would blunt this new attack, buying the Loyalists enough time for Gilliman's arrival. Meanwhile, Azek Ahriman's Thousand Sons force, accompanied by word-bearers and their cultist slaves under the Apostle of the Unspeaking, moved on the comet between Venus and Terra, capturing it from light servitor defenses and beginning a great sacrificial ritual prepared on the order of Lorgar years prior. The ritual depended on an absolute timetable, having been initiated at a precise celestial alignment in the solar system that had not been seen since the Age of Strife. As Ahriman and the word-bearers conducted their ritual, Abaddon's remaining Sons of Horus contingent emerged over Luna. The moon's defensive rings sported defenses greater than the entire expeditionary fleets, and the Phalanx inbound Abaddon's relatively small fleet seemed doomed to a quick death. However, at the exact moment that Ahriman's ritual on the comet was reaching its crescendo, Abaddon plunged his battle barge War Oath into the defensive ring around Luna as he and his warriors teleported aboard the moon's surface. The kamikaze attack blew a 20-kilometer-long gap into Luna's defensive ring as Ahriman departed the comet, which became an epicenter for a massive black scar in reality, which briefly blocked out the sun itself. From this tear in real space came tens of thousands of traitor vessels, including the full might of the World Eaters, Thousand Sons, and Emperor's children. Besides conventional warships, this force also included hordes of winged demons. At the head of this impossibly vast armada ahead was Angron, standing atop the battlements of Conqueror, Fulcrum aboard the Pride of the Emperor, and Horus himself commanding the Vengeful Spirit. The new arrivals struck towards Luna, annihilating and scattering Battlefleet Solar and the Lunar Defense Network. On Luna's surface, a Justaran and Wordbearer's assault under Abaddon and Layak eventually succeeded in securing the coveted Selenar gene seed technology that had been used to create the original Astartes. The presiding Selenar matriarch, Heliosa 78, ultimately chose to side with Horus, then carry out her orders from Dorn to destroy her precious gene tech before it could fall into traitor hands. Dorn attempted to organize a counterattack aboard the Phalanx, but another one of Horus's trump cards took effect. The Remembrancer, Mercedes Olitan, who had been brought aboard the battle station by Garviel Loken due to an urgent need to speak to the Primarch, was revealed to have been unknowingly corrupted by Malogurst years prior. From a warp eye placed on her, the demon Samus emerged directly into the bowels of the Phalanx. Dorn's own command bridge was assailed by both demonic hordes and Samus's madness, and in desperation the Primarch unleashed his librarians, which had been interred aboard the station since the Council of Nicaea. Not even the rival Sigismund's reinforcements from Pluto could turn the tide. Dorn fought Samus himself, but every time the demon died, he was reborn by possessing one of the many nearby corpses. To end Samus's rampage, a distraught Oleton threw herself into the Phalanx reactor chamber, with her death closing the portal from which the demons were able to manifest. Though the Phalanx was now secure, victory in the Sol system was now impossible. Luna had fallen, Mars was rapidly being relieved, and Horus's armadas were closing in all around them. Dorn ordered the Imperial Army Admiral Nyora Su-Kasen take the Phalanx out into the outer solar system in order to save it from certain destruction while he returned to Terra aboard Sigismund's frigate Persephone. The surviving loyalist vessels in Luna's orbit either fled into the void or docked in Terra's atmosphere. With the solar system now in his hands, Horus was finally able to strike at the throne world itself. After a little over a month of fighting, on the 13th day of Secundus, the first orbital strikes from Horus's fleet fell upon Terra. The Siege of Terra had begun. Well, what do you think of Dorn's defenses, brother?
Well, personally, I think they're fairly well stacked out. It's just I don't know. Me personally, I'm a little bit more aggressive when it comes to defenses. I love that the best defense is a good offense strategy. And he only shows here anyways, twice where he tries to use a counterattack. I'm more like anyways what Jagatai Khan tried to do. A lot more herring strikes and reposes, although it didn't work out great for him. Horus did figure out a lot more of the strategy than they even thought, which to me anyways was kind of interesting. He must have had some other people anyways involved with spying and sneaking in, trying to figure out a lot of this stuff. But
I beg to differ when it comes to that. Well, at least when it came to the counterattack by the White Scars, I think truly they weren't aware of that at the time. Because it wasn't until Ezekiel and somebody else actually boarded and killed Jubal Khan.
Okay, so what you're saying is that it was really actually Ezekiel Abaddon who defeated the Khan?
Jubal Khan? Yeah, apparently.
That's close to heresy, sir.
Not the Primarch the Khan.
I think he placed Abaddon in a good spot, and Abaddon was smart enough anyways to roll with the punches and figure out anyways a way to eliminate Jubal Khan, and he did.
Yes, but I don't think Horus was aware that the White Scars were suddenly there.
But it didn't matter. He still kind of curb stomped everybody in this thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is what I meant by the whole counterattacks. The other thing, though, that I think should have taken place, and you can argue this one too, but before this all taken place, anyways, they should have reconquered Mars. Having a situation, anyways. They should have expended more forces and literally taken that out. That way, anyways, they didn't have to worry about anyways being attacked from two different sides in that engagement.
I also think that Dorn probably would have not pulled the Phalanx out nearly as quickly as he did, except for, kind of something that happens when you're fighting inside of something is generally you damage stuff. So during his fighting demons and Samus, apparently there was a decent amount of damage done inside of the Phalanx.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was also the concept that literally the rest of the fleet had disintegrated around him. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Phalanx is a massive, mighty ship. It's up there with Blackstone fortresses. It's huge. It's a world crusher. But at the same time, you've got one world crusher versus 4 giant traitor armadas. It might hold for about 50 seconds until somebody blows it up.
The thing is that at the time, it had been complete. The defense had been completely destroyed at that time when he told it to be pulled out.
I mean, the writing was on the wall, Yuksen. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, but I'm saying though is he probably wouldn't have pulled it out as quickly as he had if it was.
I don't know. I don't know. I think at that point, anyways, it was space was done. I think Dorn figured that out. He looked at it and he's like, "Yeah, we've lost this battle, but we will not lose the war." Hence why, anyways, he has the phalanx, anyways, move off into space, because if there is some fleeting chance that they need a world killer later on, he can call upon it instead of it getting blown up. So he's just moving a piece, anyways, in a different direction so that it's not taken off the board. That's my thought. But what do you think? Do you think, anyways, he did this? He defended the Sol system fairly well here.
One of the things I'm surprised is about the gene tech.
Yeah.
Why he didn't move it?
Relocated to Terra.
Relocate to Terra, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
If the thing you're defending the most is Terra, and you have something like gene tech, which is probably one of the most important things that you have, you should move that to Terra.
The only thing I could possibly think of, anyways, is there's so much of it and it's so big, they couldn't move it. In which case, anyways, I will agree with you though on this aspect too, is that in that case, Dorn should have been able to want to have the button on it anyways to blow it up. He shouldn't have passed that down to somebody, a gene tech priest. I mean, that would be something that if I was the commander, that would be the thing that I would be like, yeah, no, I'm holding on to this button. But I can do it. No, that's okay. I got this one. I mean, but yeah, I agree with you. I think, anyways, they should have moved all this stuff to Terra because, I mean, I don't know how much of a huge difference it really makes, just simply because the Siege of Terra, I mean, it takes less than a year, right, for the whole thing to conclude?
Well, yeah, just the event. This event took 13 days over a month,
days or something like that. Yeah,
it took a month and 13 days.
Right. I mean, like I said, the initial
that's a long time to hold back, actually.
If you're thinking of it like, for instance, the Terran 42 naval combat. Okay, so the Battle of Midway in World War II was a fairly lengthy endeavor. That didn't even last a day, I don't think. Yeah. So for him to last that long, yes, that is impressive. But I don't know, there's parts of me that, like I said, I'm a little bit more aggressive. So the concept that I loved, anyways, that the Khan used, and it was the Khan's idea, by the way, the whole harrying these armadas as they're slowly making their way towards Terra. To me, I would have put a little bit more forces into that than just the White Scars. But that's just me. Then again, Dorn's also looking at this along the lines of this. All we are doing is slowing these guys down long enough so that we can get reinforcements in.
Right.
That's his big deal. So
and
if his
forte is more along the lines of how best to shore up things.
Yeah, and fortress fighting.
Right.
And so
whereas
anyways,
the White Scars,
the palace,
it's their bread and butter.
Yeah. But as opposed to building up, like, for instance, he built up the palace and the throne room and all this stuff, anyways, he built up on Terra.
Right.
So I think a lot of the also thought process is that we're just doing this to slow things down, and the real metal meets the meat on Terra.
Right.
That's what is all going to be decided.
Why probably what would have lasted longer if he had left more of his Space Marines also out there, but instead he pulled most of them back to Terra.
So I guess before we continue on, anyways, do you think that was a good idea or not? Would you prefer to continue fighting in space longer and then had a little bit of a weaker defense on Terra? Or would you have done what he did?
I am not sure.
Okay, let me rephrase this. If you had all of his forces at your commands anyways, how would you set up these defenses?
I'd probably set up pretty similarly. I may have had, well, I'm not sure who chose how much of the White Scars were set up there.
That was the Khan.
The Khan?
Jagatai specifically is just like, no, I'm going to control my own troops, and Dorn was cool with that. He's like, I have no idea how you engage war. You be you, Khan. I mean, that was kind of his whole concept there. which was fairly smart, in my opinion, anyway.
Yes.
Another thing, though, I mean, okay, so they blew up the moon, anyways, by Pluto. Why didn't they do that with all the rest of the moons?
Yeah, that's one thing that I was
And they
wondering.
could do that. It's just like, yeah, just wait till these fleets go by and just keep hitting the button. Just keep knocking out as many of these guys as possible. There got to be.
And why was it only one moon? One of the moons near Pluto. There were apparently more than one since they started shooting each other.
Okay, so I've actually been reading, anyways, the documentation on this a little bit more in depth, and there is a sentence in there, anyways, that it sounds like they did detonate all 3 moons, but it's just literally one sentence, and it's a little garbled. So from everything else that I've read, though, it just sounds like it's just this one moon.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just because that's the only thing they really give a whole lot of description on, and then there's just like this one little sentence at the end, or it literally was just the one moon. But
and then you go, why?
Well, not only that, but blowing up a moon, that causes a lot of problems. I mean, for everybody. If anybody's on that planet, you're screwed. It helps with the whole, solar system being still in orbit. Anyways. I think we do have to move on, don't you, Yuksen?
Yeah.
Like you said, Yuksen, the Siege of Terra by the traitor forces of Horus began on the 13th day of Secundus, with an orbital bombardment by the War Master's fleet as the prelude to the ground invasion. After a solar days of bombardment, the traitor legions landed on the surface of Terra in drop pods and advanced on 2 spaceports nearest the location to the Imperial Palace to secure them in preparation for the main landings of the traitor forces. Elements from 5 of the traitor legions participated in the initial ground assault, aided by the traitor forces already on the surface. Despite the brave efforts of the Loyalists, the Eternity Wall and the Lion's Gate spaceports fell within only solar hours to the traitors' invasion. Chaos cultists, traitor Imperialis Auxilia, and renegade Imperialis militia troops made their invocations and blood sacrifices, thinning the barriers to the Immaterium and calling down the greater demons of chaos from the warp directly onto Terran soil. With the spaceports secured, Horus's remaining troops of the traitor legions and their immortal auxilia and dark mechanicum forces landed en masse, and the hulking transports carried thousands of troops each, as well as bringing to the battlefield the terrible chaos titans that served the War Master's cause and had been possessed by the demonic entities of chaos. Now, Yuksen, I don't know what's worse, a titan or a titan infused with a demon. That's got to be pretty bad. Anyways.
Well, it depends on what the demon is. If it's like an imp, I mean...
It's like a nurgling. Like, great. It's like doing this happy dance.
How is it frothing?
Yeah. Anyways. The transports' immense size made them the prime targets for Terran ground-based defense lasers. Although many of the traitors' landing craft were destroyed in atmosphere, many more made it to the surface, disgorging yet more soldiers, main battle tanks, and traitor titans to add to the besiegers' strength. They met stiff resistance from the Loyalists, as the Imperial defenders knew that the survival of the Imperial throne world, their emperor, and the entirety of humanity rested on their shoulders.
So, the Chaos Besiegers forced the Imperial defenders back to the walls of the Imperial Palace, where thousands died, slowing the assault. The Primarch Angron of the World Eaters Legion, now a demon prince of the Blood God Khorne, came forth before the walls of the palace and demanded the Loyalists' surrender, saying that they were cut off, outnumbered, and defended a ruler unworthy of their loyalty. Many would have surrendered to Angron after seeing the sheer power of the forces of chaos that stood arrayed before them, had not been for the Primarch Sanguinius, the winged and seemingly angelic leader of the Blood Angels Legion. The 2 Primarchs, once brothers, gazed at each other, perhaps communicating telepathically. Eventually, Angron withdrew from before the gates of the Imperial Palace, telling his forces, not without some relish at the prospect of slaughter, that there would be no surrender.
Yep.
The siege of the...
Pardon me, Yuksen. If you were just a soldier on that wall, and it's just these 2 Primarchs, and they're just staring at each other for an extended period of time, You know how nerve-wracking that would be?
I'm like, what's
What's going on?
on?
Is Sanguinius
Almost
going
want
to
to
join
walk up and wave your hand in front of them. Hello,
them? Custodes.
clue us in a little here.
A Custode like literally puts his hand above or in front of Sanguinius and kind of waves it. It's like, I don't think he's all here, man. we got a problem. But yeah, sorry. Sorry. Go ahead.
The siege of the Imperial Palace then began in earnest. 3 times the traitor forces scaled the walls, and 3 times were hurled back by Sanguinius and his Blood Angels. Outside the palace walls, Space Marine and Imperial Army forces led by Jagatai Khan, the Primarch of the White Scars Legion, unsuccessfully tried to draw the bulk of the besiegers' army away from the palace. Soon the outnumbered defenders were pushed back into the maze of corridors and bulwarks within the palace walls. Frustrated with his army's slow progress, Horus ordered the Legio Mortis, a traitor Titan legion, to demolish entire sections of the wall. Despite grievous losses, the Titan, led by the infamous Imperator-class battle Titan Daisaire, gouged open breaches in the Imperial Palace's defenses, which the traitors then flooded through. Facing a breach and potential collapse of the Imperial defenses, Jagatai Khan decided on a change of plan. Rather than assaulting the almost invincible flanks of the Chaos Army, Khan redirected his highly mobile White Scar Space Marines and the surviving Loyalist tank divisions of the Imperial Army to Lion's Gate Spaceport. At dawn, Jagatai's lightning raid caught the traitor garrison at the spaceport completely by surprise and reclaimed the spaceport for the Imperium. The Great Khan ordered his troops to reactivate the spaceport's defense lasers to prevent the traitor fleet from bringing down any more troops and equipment and form a defensive perimeter to hold their newly reconquered territory. Jagatai's troops repelled several frenzied counterattacks from the traitors and began firing on Horus's unprotected dropships. The Khan's plan worked perfectly. The flow of the traitors' men and machines to the Imperial Palace had been cut in half at a single stroke. Inspired by this success, the Loyalists also tried to seize back the Eternity Wall spaceport, but were driven back by the Chaos forces without difficulty, as they had reinforced their garrison following the loss of the Lion's Gate. Inside the palace, the defenders had been forced back to the Eternity Gate, the sole point of entry into the inner sanctum of the Imperial Palace. The Blood Angels and Imperial Fists Space Marines tried to hold back the attacking Chaos troops, while the remaining Loyalists made it through the gate. Soon the mighty bloodthirster Greater Demon, Kabanda, came forth and bellowed out a challenge to Sanguinius in the name of his master Khorne. The demon hurled itself at the Angel of Baal, barely allowing him time to parry the demon's strikes. The two took to the air, trading blows and battle cries high above the heads of the two forces. Sanguinius was cast down by the demon, pulverizing the concrete below upon impact. The Loyalist forces seemed to collectively groan. Yet the Blood Angel's Primarch was not beaten, only stunned by the force of the impact. Sanguinius cleared his head, forced himself back to his feet, and once again took to the sky. The angel seized the gloating demon, holding it by the right ankle and arm. The Primarch hefted the creature high and broke its back over his knee, before hurling the demon's carcass back at the besiegers, who howled in despair as the last Loyalist fell back and made it into the Imperial Palace's inner sanctum, before the great portal of the Eternity Gate was shut tight behind them.
The Siege of Terra, following the initial assault on the Imperial Palace, lasted for 55 solar days. Both sides knew that the defeat of the Imperium of Man was near after the defense of the Eternity Gate. Sensing this and knowing that he must complete the siege before the arrival of Loyalist reinforcements from other Space Marine legions that were already on their way, Horus prepared to teleport to the surface from his flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, to lead his forces in person. Before this could happen, though, the word bearer's first chaplain, Erebus, broke the news to Horus. Their demonic allies in the warp had informed them that the Space Wolves Legion was nearing Terra, and the Ultramarines were only a short distance behind. At that moment, Horus despaired. His gamble had failed. Solar weeks of further conflict would be needed to break the defenders, and the Emperor's reinforcements would arrive in mere hours. What happened next is disputed in the Imperial historiography of the Horus Heresy. Some believe Horus disabled his void shields as he experienced one last moment of regret for his betrayal of his father and turned to chaos, while others believe it was a personal challenge to the Emperor. What do you think it is, Yuksen?
I have no idea at this point what he was really thinking, so...
Personally, I think it was actually a personal challenge. But nevertheless, Horus lowered the void shields of his great vessel, the Gloriana-class battleship Vengeful Spirit. The lowering of these shields was detected by the Loyalist vessels in orbit, and information was relayed to the Imperial Palace. The Emperor of Mankind rose to the challenge, leading his elite personal guard, the Adeptus Custodes, the Primarchs Sanguinius and Rogel Dorn, and several companies of Imperial Fists and Blood Angel veteran Space Marines, in the assault and teleported aboard the Vengeful Spirit. Horus used his warp-fueled powers to scatter the Emperor's forces throughout the massive warship when they teleported up through the warp. Each fought a series of battles against the forces of chaos aboard the corrupted starship, attempting to link up with their comrades and confront Horus. It was Sanguinius who reached his brother Horus first. The War Master attempted to turn the Blood Angel's Primarch, his oldest and closest friend amongst the other Primarchs, to chaos one last time. When Sanguinius refused to be corrupted, Horus attacked. Sanguinius proved to be no match for Horus, now at the peak of his demonic power after his long alliance with the ruinous powers. Horus strangled the Angel of Baal with ease. An alternate version of this event, sometimes recorded in the Imperial records, has Sanguinius cutting a small hole in the War Master's power armor before he died, and this hole provided a crucial aid in the Emperor's final defeat of Horus. Regardless, when the Emperor of Mankind finally entered the throne room of the Vengeful Spirit, he saw the winged corpse of the angelic Sanguinius lying at Horus's feet. Horus called the Emperor foolish for refusing the power of the Chaos Gods offered to men, and timid for not taming them to his will, if he was truly the master of mankind, as he claimed. Horus proclaimed that if the Emperor would kneel before him, then he would spare his life. But the Emperor, tens of millennia older than his misguided and once beloved son, knew well the trap that had snared Horus. The Emperor told the corrupted Primarch that he was the deluded slave of chaos, not its master, for no mortal could ever truly claim to be more than simply a pawn of the ruinous powers. Snarling, Horus hurled bolts of demonic lightning at the Emperor, but the Emperor nullified them with his own immense psychic abilities. The die was cast. Each godlike being knew that the fate of humanity now hung in the balance. The Emperor and Horus engaged one another in the throne room of the massive battle barge, a battle that was both physical and psychic in nature. Though the Emperor's psychic gifts and martial skills were unequaled, he found himself unwilling to summon his full strength against his beloved son. The Emperor suffered grievous wounds at Horus's hand, and after a score of thrusts, parries, and counter-thrusts between the Emperor's rune sword and his own lightning claw, Horus sliced open the Emperor's chest armor, then sliced his jugular and severed the tendons in his right wrist, disarming the Emperor. A psychic blast seared the flesh from the Emperor's face, destroying one of the Master of Mankind's eyes. After tearing the Emperor's right arm from its socket, Horus raised his father high over his head and broke his back over his knee. At that moment, a lone loyalist warrior entered the bridge, just as the Emperor fell. Horus, gloating in victory, showed the Imperial warrior the Emperor's broken form and laughed, taunting the loyalist's uselessness and defeat. The valiant Imperial warrior, far from being daunted, roared in defiance and interposed himself between the Emperor and the War Master, heroically holding the line against the chaos-corrupted Primarch. He was flayed alive for his defiance by a glancing psychic blast from Horus. Now, the exact identity of the brave warrior is a source of much debate amongst Imperial historians. For today, only the Emperor knows the truth. The Adeptus Ministerium tells the story that it was a lone Imperial army trooper named Olanius Pius, not to be confused with Olanius Person, who held the line. going as far as to canonize the man as the guardian saint of the Astra Militarum in the 32nd millennium. Yet many doubt that mere humans would have accompanied the Emperor and his Primarch to confront Horus. The Imperial Fist maintained it was one of the Terminators who challenged Horus. However, some see this as a desperate attempt to lessen their collective guilt stemming from the fact that Rogel Dorn never could participate in the fighting. Most savants now agree that it was probably one of the Legio Custodes who interceded. Yet the other stories continue to be told and retold over the whole of the Imperium of Man. Regardless, the casual brutality of the War Master's act galvanized the Emperor as he realized what awaited mankind under the rule of Horus and the Chaos Gods. Realizing at last that his favorite son was truly lost to the corruption of chaos, the Emperor finally gathered his full and awesome psychic power in the Immaterium and unleashed a lance of pure warp energy that pierced the gloating Horus's psychic defenses and ripped his body apart. In some versions of this tale, this blast was only able to pierce the War Master's body through the hole that had been made by Sanguinius before his death. Just before Horus died, he looked his father in the eye, shedding a single tear, begging his father to forgive him for his betrayal. The Emperor saw regret in his fallen son's eyes. The Emperor also knew that the ruinous powers could attempt to possess Horus again, and that he would not be there to stop him if they did. Driving all of the near infinite reserves of compassion from his mind, for the sake of humanity, he had served and loved all the years of his long life. The Emperor summoned his power once more and destroyed Horus utterly. His essence burned from existence, so that the ruinous powers could not resurrect him as a demon prince through their claim on his soul. The destruction of Horus's soul sent a psychic shockwave surging across the soul system, casting the demons of chaos back into the warp, and spreading mass panic among the traitor legions and other traitor forces on the surface of Terra in seconds, as the Chaos Gods found their powers disrupted temporarily by the death of their favorite mortal vessel. It became clear to the forces of chaos that their champion had been defeated. A terrible berserk fury, later known as the Black Rage, had encompassed the Blood Angels at the moment of their Primarch's death, and they were surging forth to scatter the attackers. Retreat turned to rout, and rout soon turned into a bloodbath. Thousands upon thousands of traitor Space Marines and Titans fell attempting to flee. The ground before the Sanctum Imperialis ran red with the blood of traitors and heretics. The traitor forces made their way back to their dropships and prepared to flee the throne world. It is said that Primarch Angron took one final, longing look at the Imperial Palace the traitors had almost seized before he boarded his own dropship. Reports from the time indicated that the Sons of Horus, sensing the moment of their Primarch's death, immediately broke from the siege and were the first to flee from Terra, while Mortarion and the Death Guard Legion were the last. Meanwhile, on the Vengeful Spirit, the Primarch Rogel Dorn finally found his way to the corrupted Starship Bridge, only to discover his fallen brother, Sanguinius, and the shattered body of his father, the Emperor, who was now on the verge of death, his remaining psychic energy spent in the battle with Horus. It was then that the Emperor whispered instructions to Dorn, urging the Imperial Fist Primarch to take him to the device known as the Golden Throne in the inner sanctum of the Imperial Palace. The surviving loyalists teleported back to the Imperial dungeons beneath the Imperial Palace. Here, Malcador the Sigillite, the Regent of Terra, who was himself the second most powerful human psyker, had briefly taken the Emperor's place on the Golden Throne, thus keeping the warp gate to the extension of the webway that the Emperor had been building on Terra for the benefit of humanity safely closed. As Malcador's body was being removed and the Emperor was put in his place, the Regent of Terra's body began to collapse to dust from the sheer strain of holding back the dangers of the Immaterium from coming through the webway gate and assaulting Terra. Yet, the Sigillite somehow managed to impart his final remaining psychic energy to the Emperor before his death to restore the Master of Mankind to consciousness for one last time. Suddenly awakened, the Emperor delivered his final instructions to his servants before being entered into the device as the adepts of the Mechanicus furiously worked to modify it to the Emperor's specifications. The Emperor spoke his final words to his followers. He urged them to continue to fight to free humanity from chaos and the machinations of the ruinous powers, as well as the ignorance that continued to assail it. And then the Master of Mankind spoke no more. His body entombed within the life-supporting mechanisms of the Golden Throne, his spirit caught between the warp and a crippled, decaying body for a millennia. Unable to complete the webway project that the Golden Throne had originally been intended to create and maintain, the Emperor now chose to use his psychic augmentation mechanisms, both to maintain his shattered body's life support functions and to project his mind into the Immaterium, where he would create and maintain the Astronomicon navigation beacon to hold the Imperium together and battle the Chaos Gods on their own plane, always seeking to protect mankind from the corruption and depredations. The Imperium of Man had survived the Horus Heresy intact, but would evolve into a bastion of repression and brutality the Emperor had long fought against without his direct guiding hand upon it. In this, at least, the Chaos Gods had won a partial victory, for this state of affairs would ensure that their temptations would continue to corrupt the weaker members of the human race and prevent the final establishment of a new and better order across the galaxy. Yet for all of its terrible and growing flaws over the next 10 millennia, the Imperium would also offer humanity its best and perhaps only hope for survival in an uncaring and increasingly hostile universe. Well, folks, that's the end of this glorious tale of the Horus Heresy. But before we go, Yuksen, tell me what strikes out to you about this interesting part of history.
Okay, so when it comes to...
Okay, first off, I find it impressive that we actually got through the whole thing in 2 months.
Yeah.
It long, countless hours, but still, 2 months.
The whole section concerning the events of the Emperor against Horus
Mm-hmm.
and everything around that sounds like it is very much propaganda.
I do think there is a huge aspect of propaganda in that, yes.
Because I just don't see the Emperor as being somebody who loved humanity so much. I mean, I know that he cared for humanity, but loved...
Love is a strong word, yes. But
yes.
to me, it's more along the lines of he held back the entire time until that one dude anyway shows up and puts himself between him and Horus. To me, anyways, I think he was going full tilt and Horus was kind of kicking the crap out of him, and then he got a reprieve. And that was just long enough anyways for him to Hadouken Horus into oblivion.
Well, there is, of course, the idea could be is that originally he wasn't taking it altogether seriously until he realized that, oops, he should have been taking it seriously.
Until he was a bloody
time where he got stripped and beaten and sliced. And I noticed that the Primarchs really like breaking people's backs or their knee. Yep. Another thing is apparently the greatest weakness that these people seem to have is ego.
Well, yeah, and I can see why, though. I mean, think about it. They're all pretty much demigods or gods among men. I mean,
well, that plus, I mean, even the fight where Sanguinius fights against the greater demon,
right?
It's like, okay, yeah. What's one of the reasons why he is able to win that one? Oh, yeah, because the guy has so much of an ego, he's gloating before he even finishes off Sanguinius. Huh.
Well, okay. Well, that's just straight up a bad guy thing. It's monologuing. They all do it. All good bad guys do this. They all monologue before they finally defeat the person, and that just gives them enough time to recuperate and kick their butt. Reminds me of a Terran 42 movie. What was that? The Incredibles. He starts monologuing again. Yeah. That's what I got it. I mean, monologuing. It's true with all villains, unfortunately. And ironically, anyways, if you look at, for instance, Horus in this, the times that he does win, he doesn't monologue. He just crushes his enemy. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, is that ironically, the few times anyways where things kind of get away from him is because he is gloating or he is feeding his ego. And then like people tend to disappear and they end up back, on the Eisenstein and they report what they found. Or, sitting there flaying this one mortal anyways going, I've beaten you all, right before he gets Hadoukened. Okay, so the Siege of Terra in and of itself, I think, is very interesting. It's very time-based too, which can be a problem a lot of times. I mean, the concept of a siege, normally it takes years for a siege to be completed.
Well, it depends.
Okay, so usually, anyways, at least on Terran 42, anyways, when a city was laid to siege, anyways, most of the time it was they starved them out. That was the best way of doing it. It was
Yeah,
years
so it
normally.
wouldn't take years necessarily.
Oh, normally it would take years because they would, have food storages and there's rats and as long as they had a good water supply, anyways, they normally could last fairly long. That's why they also brought siege equipment. But I mean, it would take forever for them to just like blast through walls, like it did actually here. I mean, that was honestly, this was the only folly that I saw, anyways, in Horus's plan here is that he knew, anyways, that he had to act fast in a siege, which to me, anyways, is rather foolhardy. If you're going, like I said, if you're going to siege, anyways, you need time for that.
Well,
Or
he didn't have that time anyways because they would have been screwed to begin with if they didn't use that one ritual at that one specific time. Imagine what would have happened if they were a day late. Oh, I guess we completely lost.
Like I said, this whole thing, anyways,
alignment. Oh, we've lost. Crap.
This whole thing was set up on a time crunch, which to me, anyways, was just okay. So here's my question to you, anyways, before we actually get into like the whole Horus Heresy. Here's my question to you: what if Horus hadn't actually done the Siege of Terra here? What if he decided to, I don't know, take all of his forces and crush Rabute Gilliman as he's coming back? Make it sound like he's like, oh yeah, they're all coming to Terra, and then just waits for Gilliman, anyways, to pop up somewhere and then just thrashes him with 5 legions. My point is,
have to have the Ultramarines by themselves at the time.
Why? Even if the Dark Angels are there and the Space Wolves are there, that's 3 legions against 5. His usual 5, and then he's got reinforcements
5.
from Titans and all sorts of different things.
Well, it wasn't really 5 because the word bearers weren't. There's only like 5,000 of them.
No, okay. I was using like the main portion, anyways. There were 5: the Sons of Horus, the Death Guard, World Eaters, Thousand Sons, and the Emperor's Children. I mean, you've got the other ones, anyways. They're kind of doing their own thing, but you take those 5 legions against those 3, which, by the way, the Space Wolves at this point, anyways, hadn't fully mustered because they had that whole thing with the Burning Prospero. They lost a ton of ammunition and forces.
Right.
Gilliman has been fighting his own war, anyways, on the other side of the galaxy. He's not doing too terribly great. And the Dark Angels they're the Dark Angels. Or half of them had turned traitor at that point, right? Well, maybe not half, but a large majority of them under Luther. So why I'm just asking, anyways, why take Terra now? Why not, anyways, shore up your flanks before you take Terra?
Well, I think part of it had to deal with, like I said, that one ritual.
So you're saying that the only reason that this could possibly work is that they did that one ritual. That's thin.
I said one of the aspects could be.
Okay. Well, no, I'm just saying, anyways, if that was the reason why Horus decided to do what he did, anyways, that's a really thin line, anyways, to be betting all your, chips, anyways, on victory. That's teeny tiny. But like I said, why wouldn't he? Why does he have to take Terra now? It seems like he's kind of kicking the crap out of everybody else in the galaxy at this point.
Because the more time they took, the more time other legions would be able to start to rebuild their forces.
So you're saying, anyways, his biggest problem at this point, anyways, is that if he continued on, anyways, just like crushing all these other Space Marine legions behind him, and he'd end up in a Hannibal Barca situation?
You're gonna have to give me a reference of what that particular situation is.
Second Punic War. The Romans, Hannibal Barca was a Carthaginian. He came in through the Alps, and he ended up trying to get the Romans to engage him in war. And when they did, he kind of smashed them to pieces. But he never actually conquered Rome. His brother actually mentioned, he said, Hannibal, you know how to win a perfect victory. You just don't know what to do with it.
Right.
So you're saying, anyways, that he would fall into that category. He would just keep crushing enemies. But I mean, you keep doing that.
Do it.
Other people are building. Okay. I mean, it's not a bad thought. I'm just saying that
you have 5 giant legions, but you'd have to be spreading it over so much area to be able to get everything at once.
I hear what you're saying. I just don't understand why he had to take Terra at this particular junction. I would have at least anyways tried to crush Gilliman anyways as he's racing his way trying to get to Terra. I mean, you have 5 legions. You might as well hit him and hit him hard. That way, at least anyways, as they're bouncing off anyways, and or whatever remaining anyways ends up back in Terra. Yeah, it might reinforce him, but then that way, at least you're not worried about someone being stuck behind you. That's all I'm saying. It's just food for thought, I guess. Yeah. But as far as the Horus Heresy in and of itself, anyways, what do you think of it?
Well, you already know about my opinion concerning how well the Emperor thought things through.
Yes, we know that you're not a fan of the Emperor.
By giving the peace out without letting anybody know why. You're on your own. Why? I'm not telling you.
So
I trust you. Why don't you tell me? No.
So you're saying that the Horus Heresy is really just a series of unfortunate events?
No, I'm saying that there were many mistakes made that create it. Like, for example, even Malcador didn't give them any information either. He also have Erebus, who should burn and be disintegrated. Should have had Magnus use that disintegration spell that he has on him.
I wonder what would have happened if the Horus Heresy still took place, but Chaos wasn't involved. And what I mean by that is they're like going to heal Horus anyways, and he goes, "Yeah, sure, I'll fight for Chaos." And as soon as he comes out of there anyways, he kind of gives them the middle finger and says, "You know what? I'm going to do my own thing, but I'm still going to conquer the Empire. So leave me alone."
Except for a lot of their power came from actually people that drew power from the warp.
Like what? Other than that goofy ritual that we were just talking about. I mean, a lot of this anyways, it would have been harder, but I think a lot of this he still could have done anyways without being infused with warp. I mean, I may be wrong about that.
Him, but other people.
Like who?
Like his newborn Astartes, the different
go back. What do you mean? The newborn Astartes?
The newborn Astartes. Weren't the newborn a type of demon mutation?
No. The newborn Astartes were the ones anyways, because remember they harvested all the gene seeds on S-5. They just started stuffing them into people anyways that they found along the way so they could reproduce new Space Marines. Those are the newborn.
Okay.
They're called newborn because they were new to the Horus Heresy, pretty much. You're thinking of the Gal Volbak, I think. That's what they're called. That's Lorgar's demon-infused guys.
Right. And then you would have had Fulgrim, his demon.
Here's the thing: is that the only crux is that I think I do agree with you that I think a few of the Primarchs wouldn't have followed Horus if he wasn't infused with chaos. Like I don't think Lorgar would have followed him. Fulgrim might have been one of those ones that was just like, no, I'm not doing this because he'd already kind of been corrupted by chaos. But I think a lot of the other ones would have. You might have actually had Alpha Legion actually be full on traitor. But
I don't know about that.
I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting thought. I've always kind of thought it's like, well, what if he decided to do this civil war without chaos? Could he do it? And I think he probably could, especially because of the whole thing that Magnus did. I mean, Magnus literally single-handedly took the Emperor out of this whole equation because he broke all those runes going into the Golden Throne and it opened up the warp way to Earth. So the Emperor was literally out of the equation because he was sitting there with his Sisters of Silence and the Adeptus Custodes trying to fix this and kick back all the demons anyways that kept trying to get into Earth or Terra.
Right.
So now, mind you, that's another question anyways. If that hadn't happened and Horus still goes on this rampage, what do you think the Emperor would have spent a little bit more time anyways going, oh yeah, maybe I should take care of this? As opposed to trying to fight back the demons from, entering Terra?
Well, of course, the demons wouldn't be trying to enter Terra because Horus wouldn't be using the warp to manipulate things.
No. What I'm saying is that that was a different complete question. If Magnus hadn't actually done that, so when the Horus Heresy, when he becomes infused with chaos and he starts building his armies and whatnot, do you think that the Emperor would have actually taken a step and gone on the warpath? or just stayed in Terra.
I could see him taking his forces and going on the attack.
I mean, that drop site massacre is a whole lot different animal if you've got the Sisters of Silence there, the Adeptus Custodes, and the Emperor. I mean,
Right.
that game changes drastically. So
it's like, who cares about having the Space Marines there? It's just them.
Yeah. It's like, send 5 legions. You don't need to do that. Why? I'm personally going to deal with my son. Oh.
Along with my forces.
My legions. Oh no. So yeah, it would. I think, anyways, it would have been drastically different. I mean, I think one of the reasons why this whole thing takes place is, like you said, anyways, the Emperor is out of the picture pretty much for the whole Horus Heresy.
Yeah,
he's just not there. I mean, if he was there, it would drastically have shifted the board, I think, quite a bit.
Well, plus, like I said, if Horus wasn't going to use any part of the warp, that would screw him using the Death Guard, period.
Why?
Because they ended up becoming Plague Marines.
Right. Well, before that, though, I mean, Morty definitely would have been on board. Sorry, Mortarion definitely would have been on board. Because, I mean, he's literally, anyways, going away from chaos. Now, what's his face? Typhus, anyways, really kind of screws over Mortarion on that one. But it seems, by the way, anyways, a lot of these Primarchs, it's not like they literally shift towards chaos. It's other people moving them in that direction, other pieces moving them
mainly
in that direction.
Erebus, but
or Erebus, yeah, Erebus,
mainly Erebus, because Erebus actually basically twisted Typhus.
Well, okay, but still, Typhus is the one that continued that ball rolling. Yes, if Erebus had been shot as a young child, a lot of this, anyways, would have happened a lot differently. We can all say that we. I really don't like Erebus. There are redeeming qualities.
Device too. That's the other thing.
He's the plot
device.
He
shows up everywhere.
He's the evil plot device. And yet we still keep talking about him, even though we don't want to.
Because he's the evil plot device that shows up everywhere.
It's frustrating. And he's still alive. That's the even more annoying part. He doesn't get his just desserts at the end of this thing. No. He's still alive. Still murdering people in the 41st millennium.
42nd.
Acadia. He's murdering people at Acadia. That's why I went by the 41st. But just the fact that he's still there. It's just annoying. But before we end this, anyways, just a couple of quick questions. Let's just kind of bolt these out. Because, I mean, this is probably the greatest piece of history, anyways, in the Imperium of Man, right?
Right.
I mean, there are other parts, anyways, that we actually have talked about, like, for instance, the War of the Beast is pretty cool. The Age of Apostasy, that's another one that's really interesting. And, of course, everybody's favorite, the Fall of Cadia, or Cadia stands, depending on who you talk to. But, and now we're getting into the Adominus era. But real quick, who is your favorite hero in the Horus Heresy? And who is your most hated villain? And you can't use Erebus because he is a plot device.
When it comes to heroes, does that include people that are still living technically?
It could be anybody. It could be Alonius Pius, who stepped in front of the Emperor to save humanity. I mean, that's a pretty good hero, but
Yeah.
a lot of people don't think he's there. He was actually there. Okay, who's a couple favorite heroes and a couple favorite your villains?
Well, one of them is Bjorn.
Bjorn the Fell-Handed?
Yes.
One of the few guys that we really didn't talk about this entire last 2 months. So, if you want to know more about Bjorn, check out our Space Wolves notable characters.
Or also the Primarch, because I believe we talked about him and Lehman Russ also.
So, congratulations, Yuksen. I asked you to name a few heroes, and you picked one guy, anyways, that we didn't talk about at all in the last 2 months.
No, that's not true. We did talk about him when it came to the Council of Nicaea.
For like a minute. Okay, so you got Bjorn the Fell-Handed. Who else?
Obviously, Vulcan. Didn't talk much about him either, but
Well, and we didn't talk about this much, but in the Siege of Terra, he's the guy that literally guards the Golden Throne while the Emperor, Rogel, Dorn, and Sanguinius are off on the Vengeful Spirit. It was pretty much him by himself, wasn't it?
Right. And Magnus showed up and he stopped Magnus.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he actually plays a very vital role in this. We just didn't have a chance to really go over it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's a couple of heroes, both of which we didn't talk about much. How about villains?
Fulgrim.
He's one of your favorite villains? Why?
No, he isn't a favorite villain. He's just a villain that I don't like.
Oh, okay. Why?
He's a pompous, egotistical, and also he ends up becoming a complete, well, he kind of is a a-hole in general, but...
I believe Nathaniel Garrow put it best. A prancing peacock.
Yes.
You got another villain?
Let's see.
Oh, you're thinking of that anyways. My two favorite heroes probably in the Horus Heresy is, ironically, Rogel Dorn. There was a lot that was put on his shoulders. And while I am a little critical anyways about his stratagems, at the same time, he still kept everything together pretty much, which was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, things were falling apart all around him anyways, but he was literally the bastion anyways for the Soul system. If Rogel Dorn, you know how we talked about anyways, what if Ferrus Manus had gone back and told the Emperor about this and Rogel Dorn had taken his spot in commanding the armies at the drop site massacre, that would have drastically changed everything. I don't think anyways the Empire wins if that happens. Rogel Dorn needed to be in the Soul system. The only other guy that I can think of anyways that would have done as well as he did would be probably Billy Bob. But
who?
Rabute Gilliman. But he had his own thing that he was dealing with. And ironically, during the Imperium Secutus, the thing that worried Malcador the Sigillite the most was that Rabute Gilliman was building his own empire. And then when the Rune Storm came down anyways, Rabute Gilliman would have claimed himself emperor and he would have taken over the Imperium. That was one of his main concerns. But another one of my favorite heroes, and he's just always has been anyways, Leman Russ. I love Leman Russ. Yeah. And he's a far more intricate character than a lot of people give him credit for. And you know what? I also like the Khan. The Khan and
yeah,
which we kind of glazed over, by the way. There was a conversation with the Khan and Leman Russ when Leman shows up on Terra, and he's not too terribly happy that the Khan left him behind and said, "Sorry, you're on your own, bro," and then just left. Now, he was a little pissed off. But as opposed to, like, for instance, if it had been, like, I don't know, Angron, which a lot of times Leman Russ is compared to as, like, you know, just like this weapon. Leman Russ swallows a lot of his anger and says, you know what? I would love to kill you right now, but we need all the people we can get. So defend this land with your life. And Khan's like, I can do that. Russ is like, cool, I'm getting on my ship. I can't talk to you anymore. I'm so pissed off. Which I wholeheartedly agree with. It's like, help, we need help. Sorry, you're breaking up. Good luck. What? No. Khan. My favorite villains, anyways, I mean, Horus. Horus has to be, he's probably my all-time favorite villain in 40K. He was a great villain, and one of the reasons why he was so great was because he was such a great hero. And then his fall is so complete. It's just, it's a great villain arc. And then the second one would have to be, it's either Angron or Perturbo. We also didn't talk about this much, but Perturbo, literally his whole reason for joining Horus was that he wanted to get to the Siege of Terra and prove that he could beat Dorn. And then he never gets that chance because then Horus dies and everybody leaves and he's like, dang it. But then he comes up with the Iron Cage and kind of gets his own little revenge later on in the Great Scouring, which I did talk about in one of my boxes. But it's probably either Turbo or Ahriman. Ahriman's also pretty cool.
I think a couple of other ones. One would be Magnus, but that's just because of
I am smart. You've done everything wrong, but I'm still smart. Sure.
Well, you do have to respect the fact that he's just like, no, he's given this option at one point of either, yeah, you can come back, but we have to completely annihilate your legion, but we'll give you a new one, or you'll be treated as a traitor, and he chooses his men over forgiveness, which I find kind of honorable in a way.
Well, okay, by that point, anyways, there was no forgiveness left. They were just going to kill him. Lehman was, or if you're talking about Prospero, Lehman
no. This was actually after Prospero. Literally, he was addressed by somebody.
Or are you talking about when the Khan talks to the ghost of Magnus?
No. Magnus comes across, I believe it's like a projection of the Emperor or something like that. And the Emperor's just like, I'll take you back. I'll even give you a new legion, but the 1,000 Suns have to go.
I was just thinking, the Emperor, anyways, is like, we'll take you back. We need somebody to stuff on the Golden Throne. I mean, we love you, son. Another reason why maybe Magnus at this point had kind of caught on a little bit, but
then the other person is actually Mortarion, just because of the fact he switches the way how he changes from being I hate all psychers, anything psyker related, to a morphine of I'm going to harness this psychic ability and use it.
Yeah, I kind of like Mortarion too. The problem with Mortarion I have is the same problem I have with Perturabo. Sorry, Perturabo. Is because
get comments on that too.
Yes, I'm still saying it wrong. But is that both of them, anyways, they're whiners. And there's one thing you can't be in 40K, and that's a whiner. Yeah, you can be a winner, but not a whiner. So that's I think one of the reasons why a lot of people are turned off by these guys. But me personally, anyways, I think Perturabo was a genius, and he always played second fiddle to Dorn. That's probably, that's the main reason why he always had a problem with the Imperium. Mortarion always, anyways, never trusted psychers, and he kept saying we need to get rid of these guys, and everybody's like, oh, he's just joshing. No, he really is. He wants to get rid of all of them. And his character arc is also kind of interesting because he literally becomes the thing that he hates the most.
Yes, that's what's so interesting about it.
Yeah. Well, before we hang up the phone here, Yuksen, is there anything else that you would like to say about the Horus Heresy, Horus, the Emperor, the Great Crusade, the Council of Nicaea, the Schism of Mars, the Drop Site Massacre, the Purge of Esteban III, or the Ulnor campaign?
Nope.
Not even the Unification Wars?
Nope.
Well, folks, that'd be it for this week. Nay, this is our last box on the Horus Heresy. And while I admit this is one of my favorite times in the Imperium of Man's history, we must press on to a new subject.
And what might that be, Zeckthar?
Well, one of your favorite chapters, Yuksen. The Mongols of the Galaxy. The White Scars.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this box. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe, and comment. And don't forget to check out the shop. We got some cool stuff there, like clothes, pillows, and hats.
Oh, and don't forget rabbits, Yuksen.
Right, and don't forget the rabbits.
Have a great day. And as always,
until next time, this is Zeckthar
and Yuksen
signing off.